of affected communities and workers. By prioritizing investment in renewable energy, such as sustainable industries, we can create new job opportunities, support local economies, and enhance energy security. It is through this collaborative and inclusive approach we can navigate the complexities of transition to a sustainable future. The objective of this seminar is to drive into crucial subject of the Just Transition Roadmap, which encompasses the intersection of energy transition and social equity. As we navigate the path to our sustainable future, it is imperative that we ensure a smooth and fair transition for all, leaving no one behind. This seminar provides us with a valuable platform to share insights, exchange experience, and collective shape the way forward. The principle of just transition acknowledges that we shift to cleaner and more sustainable energy system can have profound impact on communities, industries, and individuals dependent on fossil fuel or other transitional energy sources. It emphasizes the need for comprehensive strategy that consider both environmental sustainability and social justice, creating opportunities for decent works, upskilling, reskilling, and also promoting inclusive growth. During our time together, we'll explore various dimensions of Just Transition Roadmap, including policy frameworks, technological advancement, economic consideration, restructuring and repurposing of assets, social inclusivity, gender equality, and role of stakeholders in driving this transformative agenda. Moreover, this seminar aimed to foster fruitful discussions, encourage collaboration, and facilitate the exchange of innovative ideas. I extend my heartfelt appreciation to the Ministry of Power, Ministry of Coal, Coal India Limited, CMPDL, volunteers, and all the individuals who have worked tirelessly behind the scene to make this seminar a reality. Your dedication and hard work are truly commendable. Once again, I welcome every of you to this important seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for setting the context and gravity of this seminar. Now, I would like to request Shri Pramod Agarwal to deliver his address on today's event.
Respected Sri Alok Kumar, Secretary Power, respected Sri Amrit Meena Sahab, Secretary Coal, my colleagues Santosh and Bhavani, and dear friends. Here we are talking about just transition. There are two words, one is just and transition. Let's take transition first. What is transition? When we talk about energy transition, generally we understand that it is transition from fossil fuels to renewable fuels so that emission of carbon is less. I think this is slightly restricted definition because we should go slightly beyond. When we are talking about transition, basically it should mean that creating an atmosphere in which we can achieve net zero carbon emission. When we talk about the second definition, actually we attack both the sides, supply and demand. When we talk about the first side, that is transition from renewables to transition from fossil fuel to renewables, we are attacking only the supply side. This world cannot sustain this type of uses. That should be understood first. If India increases its energy consumption to the level of world average, then what will happen? Today, America is consuming about 8 times more energy than what India is doing per capita. And China is consuming about 5 times more than what India is doing. And the world average is 3 times what India does. So if India goes to the world average, then the carbon emission will increase 15% immediately because India now consumes about contributes about 7% of the carbon emission, and if it increases 3 times, then it will increase by 15% or 14% carbon emission. And whatever you do in the rest of the world, perhaps it will be very difficult to compensate. So when we talk about transition, we must understand that unless we start reducing the consumption of the energy, the way we are wasting the energy, nothing can happen, and this transition will be a very difficult thing to achieve. If you see in the last 18 years, the increase in carbon emission has been in the range of 0.74%, whereas India has increased its proportion from 5.4% to 7.8% or something in that range. So in India, the increase has taken place. If somebody talks about decreasing the energy consumption in the country, perhaps it will be difficult. Half of the country is living at the level where the reduction of energy is not possible. In Bihar, we are consuming just 330 units per annum per capita, which is sufficient just to light one lamp or one fan in a day. And reducing beyond that, or reducing to a level below that will be difficult. Yes, we can achieve energy efficiency, we can transfer from, we can transition from non-renewables to renewables, but will it match the world's requirement? I think it will be slightly difficult, and hence we have to talk about both the energy management. When we are talking about energy management, we should look at both at the demand side and supply side. And when we are talking about just transition, the just words become also equally important. In Indian context, what will happen if the coal production is stopped or the thermal power stations are stopped? Perhaps the area in which is already quite behind and which are very poor, it will be difficult to sustain the livelihood. So we have to plan right now what will we do in the future when the coal is out or the fossil fuels are out. It is no brainer, and it is a given thing that maybe after 20 years or 30 years, fossil fuels will be out. But how to replace them so that these areas don't get adversely affected and their life becomes very difficult. The second thing is the energy equity principle. Whether today what is happening, is it equitable society or what we want to achieve? These are the things we have to think, and we must think when the transition happens, the society becomes much more equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Put up really like the person who is at the helm of the world's largest coal mining company and showed the unwavering commitment towards fulfilling the energy aspirations of this country. Thank you, sir. Next, I would like to call upon Shri Alok Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Power, to share his views on today's event. Sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. On the dais, my colleague, Shri Amrit Meena ji, Secretary Government of India, Ministry of Coal, Shri Pramod Agarwal ji, the CMD of Coal India Limited, my senior colleagues on the dais, CMD NTPC, and friends. It is all energy transition day and night, and we are discussing in the other room our communique and discussions. So it is all over energy transition. It is really very important aspect of our times, the energy transition. I entirely agree with Pramod, what he said. We can't see it in isolation. There are both demand side, supply side, and moreover the common but differentiated responsibilities that we are all committed in Paris Agreement. India is fully conscious and aware of its responsibilities as a leading country in the world, and we have declared our NDCs. Those are our national commitments, and we are proud that India has achieved those initial NDCs quite advanced in time, quite well in time, and we have now upgraded our ambitions, upped our ambitions to the key NDC is the, as Pramod was saying, the reduction in the emission intensity. What we do, how efficiently we do. it cannot be anybody's case that India should not grow, India should not develop itself. It's our legitimate right and our aspirations. So we have been doing quite well on the key NDC, which captures both supply side and demand side, because when you talk of the emission intensity of an economy, you take it in totality, supply side, demand side. So we had earlier targeted to achieve 33% reduction with respect to 2005 levels by 2030. I'm very happy to share with you that only last week we were discussing, some data have come. Initially, we are already touching 33% in 2023 itself. So India is, despite being a developing country and its ambition to grow and develop, India is doing excellent work in meeting its commitments and also upgrading commitments. India will continue to do so. See, energy transition, people talk of promoting renewables, reducing imports. So there are many dimensions. Energy transition, we are conscious and we are doing it to save our environment, to fight climate change. But India has its own advantages in pursuing energy transition. Like renewables are our own resource and they are infinite resource, they are environment friendly. So accelerating energy transition will enhance our energy security, because as we are fuel switching from, like, for example, electric mobility, so we will be able to reduce our dependence on oil and petroleum products in the long run. We are also, to some extent, importing coal, of the quality which is not available in India, and sometimes some coal for blending. Also, what is turning out that in a limited manner, which is significant, renewables are also cheaper to use. The electricity generated from solar, PV solar is cheaper, whereas its costs have come down, they will further go down, whereas the cost of using fossil fuels is bound to go up. So if we have a right mix, and if we move in a more calibrated manner from fossils to non-fossils, and we promote renewable energy, it will be in interest of India's energy security as well as affordability for our masses, our people. We'll be able to reduce our dependence on imports. Wherever we go as power secretary or coal secretary, we are always asked the question, the role of coal in our energy basket. Yes, it is very important, and it will continue to be important for several years, I'll say 1 or 2 decades also to come, because it is our own resource. It provides us a firm power, a dependable power. Rather, I'll say the coal is required to support growth of renewable energy. You cannot imagine only expanding renewable energy without having some source of firm power like coal. So India is going to depend on coal for maybe 10, 15, 20 years significantly. Of course, we are a responsible country, so the share of coal-based generation in our energy supply will continuously decline. There was a general perception that our coal-based generation has gone up so much last year, around 9 to 10%. I was looking at the data compiled by the Central Electricity Authority. In the financial year which has been just closed, that is FY23, even after such a huge growth, such an accelerated growth of coal-based generation, the annual statistics tell us the share of coal-based generation has come down even in FY23 by 0.5%, full 0.5%. So India is right on the path of our homegrown solution of energy transition, and calibrated manner we are going to grow renewable energy, and coal-based generation share will come down. But not at the cost of our growth, economic growth. As Pramod was saying, our per capita emissions are I think 1/3 of the world average, and we are 33, 35, 36% of the world average. So India has its own space and own needs to grow, our overall emissions will grow, and that is our legitimate requirement. But we will continue to move on energy transition. There is one aspect which I always say, India has a golden opportunity because we can pursue energy transition, I think, in a more calibrated manner since our demand is growing. So our strategy is that whatever is the additional demand which is coming up, most of it will be met from renewable energy. So we get enough time and space, adequate time and space to make an orderly and people-friendly transition. And there is also one more certainty, the storage technologies are yet to mature. That means they are mature, of course, but their costs are very high. So we will continue to depend on coal till the time the storage technologies, their costs come down. So these are the two dimensions of our demand growth. We have to have more energy. Most of it will come from renewable energy. But till the time the storage technology, the prices come down, we will need to depend on coal-based generation for integration of renewable energy. The closure of mines can be of many times. Nobody is talking in India of a forced closure of a mine because of energy transition. The mine's closure is a process. When you start a mine and you have dug out the coal, it has to be closed. So that will happen, and when we move further after 2 decades, 1 decade, we will have more cases of mine closure. So there are always socio-economic implications of a closure of a mine in an area. Let me give you one example. In eastern UP, if somebody is familiar, in eastern part of my state, Uttar Pradesh, most of the towns have come up only for 2 reasons. Either because of a railway junction, a railway yard, or a sugar mill. If you go around Gorakhpur, Basti, Devariya, you always find either it's like Mughal Sarai, it's a big railway junction or a sugar mill. And sugar mills, when they came up, they brought upon a good local economic engine and growth engine and local prosperity. But something happened. Those sugar mills were the government and sugar mills. They became sick, and those sugar mills got closed. If you go to those towns now, you will see the difference. People have migrated, and this economies are shambles. So what I'm trying to say, give you an example that unless until you address this economic transition in an orderly manner, timely manner, the consequences will be very challenging. And especially in a democracy and in a sensitive society like India, we have to prepare well in time to take care of such economic transition in local growth centers, local growth engines. So I'm very happy that this side event is being organized by Ministry of Coal on the occasion of our third meeting of Energy Transition Working Group. It's a very important topic, and India is taking it a big way in its negotiations also, that the whole global community, G20 community, we need to pay greater attention, and we have to see that the roadmap and the SOPs and our strategies are in place in time, so that whenever a mine is getting exhausted or is to be closed, say after 5 years or 6 years, we start taking action very timely, 5 years ahead. So it takes time to build alternative ecosystem, to have alternative skill opportunities for the youth or for the people who are employed. And it is not only India. When we are talking to other G20 countries during negotiations, every country has its own peculiar circumstances. Some economies are very heavily dependent on export of oil. You talk to them. They are also equally worried. And they are defending this. They say that we need time. We need alternative technologies to transit. Countries can't transit, say, in a month or in a year or 5 years. It will take time. So this side event is very timely. This topic is very relevant. I must congratulate Ministry of Coal for organizing this seminar. I believe they are also going to release a study report, which will bring out the best practices of how to take care of an impending or a expected closure of a mine, because coal has been exhausted, but the economy should not be affected because of transition to some other economic activities. I extend my best wishes to this side event, and I look forward to the recommendations of this study report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We are indeed fortunate to learn about how India is going to change its energy matrix in a responsible manner. Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to invite Shri Amrit Meena for his keynote address on this seminar. Sir.
Respected Sri Alok Kumar ji, Secretary, Ministry of Power, Sri Pramod Agarwal ji, Chairman Coal India Limited, Sri Bhavani Pati ji, Joint Secretary, my colleague in Ministry of Coal, Santosh ji, and all esteemed participants. I am grateful that all of you have been able to make time to attend this seminar being organized on the sidelines of third Energy Transition Working Group. This Energy Transition Working Group is having useful, meaningful deliberations under guidance of Sri Alok Kumar ji. Under his leadership, all the ministries associated with the energy sector are putting together the efforts to have best output of this working group. As you all know, today we are talking of just transition roadmap, and the phrase just transition came in prominence after its inclusion in climate declaration COP21 held in Paris in 2015. It was emphasized that for keeping global warming within acceptable limit, it is imperative for the countries to accelerate energy transition from existing carbon-intensive energy systems to low-carbon pathways, and must also ensure that such transition becomes just transition, where livelihoods of each impacted person are secured and no one is left behind. However, the transition to a low-carbon economy has far-reaching implications for industries, communities, and workers reliant on fossil fuel. The concept of a just transition recognizes the need to address the social and economic consequences of these changes. It ensures that the burden of transiting away from fossil fuel is not disproportionately borne by vulnerable communities or the workers. One of the key aspects of a just transition is the creation of alternative economic opportunities and decent work. It requires investing in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and other sustainable sectors to generate new employment and support affected communities. By doing so, we can protect workers' livelihood and ensure a smooth and fair transition to a greener future. Energy security refers to the availability, accessibility, and affordability of energy sources. It is a critical consideration for countries worldwide, as access to reliable and sustainable energy enterprise, economic development, social progress. Balancing energy security with climate goals is a complex task. However, a just transition can be a catalyst for achieving both objectives simultaneously. To deal with the challenge of climate change with great courage and ambition, our Honorable Prime Minister at COP26 in Glasgow gave 5 nectar elements, Panchamrit, and Mission Life for Environment. The Life is a movement for global community of individuals and institutions to drive life as an international mass movement towards mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless and destructive consumption to protect and preserve the environment. The Panchamrit and Life movement are not only helping to achieve climate goals, but also are playing a crucial role in just and inclusive energy transition. Further, by embracing renewable energy sources and enhancing energy efficiency, countries can diversify their energy mix, reducing dependence on fossil fuels and enhancing energy security. Renewable energy technologies have witnessed remarkable advancements, making them increasingly cost competitive and reliable. Investment in renewable energy not only mitigates climate changes, but also reduces vulnerability associated with the fossil fuel dependency, such as price fluctuation and geophysical tensions. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that just transition in energy security cannot be achieved by government alone. Collaboration among government, private sector, civil society, and communities is essential. This collective effort must be guided by a commitment to inclusivity, transparency, and accountability. In this seminar, we have the unique opportunity to bring together diverse perspectives, experiences, and expertise from across sectors and organizations. Though open and constructive dialogues, we can learn from each other's experience, identify the best practices, and explore innovative solutions that will shape the path towards a just and sustainable future. I would once again like to extend my gratitude to all the distinguished speakers and panelists who have gracefully agreed to share their knowledge and insight with us today. Your expertise and experience are invaluable in shaping the discussions and generating meaningful outcome from the seminar. Equally important are contribution of each and every participant present here. Your engagement, active participation, and willingness to collaborate are vital in advancing and understanding the subject. I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of the Coal India Limited, CMPDIL, and all others who are actively involved in making this seminar a great success. Your dedication and hard work have made this gathering possible. I commend you for commitment and all outstanding management of this event. As we move forward, I encourage all of us to approach this seminar with an open mind, a spirit of collaboration, and a shared commitment to finding sustainable solution. Let us engage in fruitful discussion, challenge conventional wisdom, and think creativity about the opportunity and challenges that lie ahead. Together, we can contribute to the development of robust policy framework, innovative technology, and inclusive strategies that promote a just transition for all. Let us seize this moment to build bridges, forge partnerships, and create a brighter future for generations to come. Thank you, and I wish you all a successful and impactful seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom and guiding us how this seminar shall proceed. And I'm sure your words will be the highlights of how coal sector will take this just transition forward. Ladies and gentlemen, Indian coal sector has always been aware of its environmental obligations and responsibility towards society. Our guidelines and frameworks have evolved over decades as we have contributed to the growth of energy security of this country. And today, we have the honor of launching and showcasing a collection of such endeavors of Indian coal industry towards best practices of mine closures and improving aesthetics of land for mining projects in the presence of our esteemed dignitaries. I would request all dignitaries on the stage to please launch these books. Sir, we have books on your left. The first section, sir, is 2 reports. Just the top section, sir. They contain 2 reports. Best Global Practices for Just Transition in Coal Sector, developed in partnership by CMPDI and World Bank, and G20 Special Edition of MineTech, an in-house magazine of CMPDI highlighting dynamics of coal mining industry. Ladies and gentlemen, these 2 books are being launched here today by such dignitaries. I would request my dignitaries to please launch another set of booklets that show the bioreclamation and plantation efforts on mined out lands and a booklet on eco-parks and mine tourism. These not only improve the aesthetics of mined out lands, but also provide alternative sustainable opportunities for nearby communities while creating awareness about our mining industry. Thank you, sirs and madam. We have always been in step with the environmental compliances and responsibility, and the last decade particularly has seen that exponential growth in the coal sector. But that growth has also come with responsible actions suitable to environment, such as compensatory afforestation, stringent monitoring of air and water, and remedial steps that we have taken. Next up is a short film depicting the sustainable and environment-friendly initiatives in coal sector. Can we please have the film up? Yeah. Is the technical glitch solved, or should we move ahead?
G20 India 2023. One Earth. G20 India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
Under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, has shown its endeavor in providing the energy security of the country by attaining environmentally and socially sustainable growth. with the mentorship from the Ministry of Coal, Coal India Limited, NLC India Limited, Singareni Collieries Company Limited, other mine operators are working incessantly towards building a green nation. The sensitivity and care towards native environment is portrayed by adopting modern coal mine technology like surface miners, continuous miners, bucket wheel excavator, along with various mitigation measures such as fog cannons, sprinklers, wheel washing system, mobile tankers and road sweeping machines to assist in control of air pollution. Air quality of the mines are monitored by continuous ambient air quality monitoring system. As a part of mine reclamation, in the last 9 years, the coal companies have planted 37.03 million saplings over 16,262 hectares. Further, to boost local tourism, employment generation and promote conservation in mining areas, coal companies also undertake development of eco-park, eco-tourism sites and eco-restoration sites in mining areas. In last 9 years, 25 such sites have been developed in mining areas. First Mile Connectivity Project is another flagship initiative where coal transportation is upgraded with covered mechanized belt conveyor from mine to silo loading system. As an indirect benefit to society, the First Mile Connectivity Project will generate employment opportunities, improve rail network services, and reduce air pollution. To promote the circular economy, 4 overburden processing plants and 4 overburden sand plants have been commissioned. This effort minimizing riverbed mining of sand. Various energy efficiency measures like use of LED lights, energy efficient motors, air conditioners, fans, e-vehicles have been emphasized to reduce the carbon footprint. Coal sector is not far behind in developing solar power projects. So far, 1,605 megawatt of solar power capacity has been installed. Providing water security is a global priority, and the Ministry of Coal is committed towards preserving the natural resources of water. All open-cast mines have effluent treatment plants to treat wastewater, garland drains to collect runoff water, and siltation ponds to settle sediments in mine water. The objective is to attempt maximum utilization of treated mine water discharge for community use and irrigation purposes. Annually, more than 373.51 million cubic meter mine water utilized for irrigation and domestic purpose. Every year, 1.7 million people are getting benefited by treated mine water in 981 villages and irrigation potential of around 173,000 acre land created annually. Government of India, Ministry of Coal, towards a brighter future.
I'm sure all the delegates present here must be appreciating how Indian coal sector, despite having such a big expanse, is continuing further with its social and environmental responsibility. Now, as a token of our gratitude, we would like to present all the dignitaries present on stage with a memento. And for this, I would request Director Technical CMPDI, Shri Shankar Nagachari, to please present a memento to Shri Amrit Meena and Shri Alok Kumar. This memento serves as an appreciation for these dignitaries to take out time here and give us their words of wisdom to align us with our goals and how we can proceed ahead. I'd request Nagachari sir to please felicitate Shri Pramod Agarwal. Now I would request ED Environment CIL Shri A.S. Bapat to please present a memento to B.V. Pati sir and Ms. Santosh. These beautiful G20 logos will act as reminder of this great event being held here at the sidelines of ETWG meetings. I'm sure that this inaugural session has showcased to our delegates and dignitaries that how coal sector is in sync with the environmental and social realities while fulfilling the aspirations of a growing nation. I now request Ms. Santosh, DDG, Coal Controllers Organization, MOC, to please deliver the vote of thanks for this inaugural session. Ma'am.
Namaskar, good afternoon. On behalf of Ministry of Coal, it is my great pleasure to extend a warm vote of thanks to all the guests for attending the seminar on Just Transition Roadmap. We are honored to have such esteemed guests present, and your valuable contribution and insight will enrich the discussion. I extend my heartfelt thanks to Alok Kumar sir, Secretary Power, and ETWG Chair for his valuable input on just transition. Sir, your expertise and experience has added a new dimension for bringing a paradigm shift in the mindset and establishing a new benchmark for making the world a better and equitable place for all the inhabitants. I extend my sincere gratitude to Shri Amrit Meena, Secretary, Ministry of Coal, for gracing the occasion with esteemed presence and sharing his valuable perspective on Panchamrit, and in promoting the importance of just transition and sustainable and inclusive development. I would like to thank Pramod Agarwal, CMD CIL, for his valuable insight, particularly with respect to coal mining and in promoting sustainability and equitable development of the sector. I would like to thank my colleague, Shri B.P. Pati, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Coal, for setting the context and gravity of the seminar. Finally, I extend my sincere thanks to all our esteemed guests for attending and contributing to this seminar. Your valuable perspective and insight will greatly enrich the discussion and will continue to inspire us in our efforts toward environmentally sustainable development of the sector. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we will move ahead towards the plenary session. Before leaving the stage, I'd request all my dignitaries to please have a group photo, sir. Thank you, sir. Now we will move ahead for the plenary session. And today we have distinguished personalities and who's who of the coal, power, and from academia that we will all be fortunate to hear from them and how, when they discuss that how India can move ahead for just transition. Meanwhile, the arrangements are being made. I'll just like to tell who are the present panelists for today's panel discussion. We have Shri Michael Stanley, Global Lead Energy and Extractives from World Bank, who is currently based in Singapore and has worked in a resource development for more than 35 years now within the commercial and public sectors across Latin America, Europe, and Central Asia, Africa, South Asia, and East Asia, basically the entire world, I think. Responding to the challenges of climate change, Michael is leading the World Bank's global initiative, Support to Energy Transition in Coal Regions, assisting a diverse group of stakeholders to establish the good governance framework necessary to manage social impacts to workers and communities while ensuring environmental remediation for repurposing of land and assets. He manages this initiative from the World Bank Singapore hub, given a strong focus on South and East Asia. Michael has degrees in geoscience, which is BSc and then MSc, and mineral resource economics, mining. He has his PhD from University of Arizona. Additionally, Michael is a co-editor of the Extractive Industries Sourcebook, both the online and open source platform, and the first edition print version of 2018. We also have from academia in India, Professor Pradeep Swarnakar, who is a distinguished scholar specializing in energy transition and climate change policy. He is a professor of sociology in the Humanities and Social Science Department at the IIT Kanpur, and the founder and coordinator of the Just Transition Research Center. The center is a pioneering initiative that conducts rigorous research to address national and subnational issues and academic and policy needs related to the energy sector, and committed for evidence-based contribution to India's journey towards net zero. Professor Swarnkar has also held positions at several prestigious institutions worldwide, including the University of Technology Sydney, University of San Francisco, and the University of Helsinki. He has had numerous high-profile research projects, including investigations on climate change policy. We also have amongst us as a panelist, Shri Gurdeep Singh, who is the chairman and managing director of NTPC Limited, India's largest integrated power utility and a global energy major. In an illustrious career spanning more than 3.5 decades, he has held leadership positions with several national and multinational companies like PowerGen, CESC, AES, IDFC, GSECL, and DVC. Mr. Singh is an alumnus of NIT Kurukshetra and IIM Ahmedabad and has undergone management and leadership training from Harvard and Oxford business schools. An accomplished business leader with expertise in building and managing businesses across the power sector value chain. Mr. Singh is leading right now the NTPC's transformational journey into a sustainable integrated energy company. Mr. Singh is also known to embrace innovation and is having a people-centric, sustainable approach to business. And under his leadership, NTPC has consistently ranked as a best employer internationally and received awards and recognitions for its community-oriented innovative CSR initiatives. So you see, this panel is full of leaders in different segments, and they are well aware of how this just transition can take place in future in India, which is fair and equitable. As we move ahead for the plenary session, there will be a focused discussion between the leaders and the decision makers for a just transition strategy and action. And I would urge all the delegates present here and listening through live media to pay very attention to this discussion, because it will be a very rare chance that such luminaries will be again congregated here in front of you. So let's make the full use of this session. So first of all, I would like to request all our panelists to join us on the stage. And the panelists are Mr. Michael Stanley from World Bank, Dr. Pradeep Swarnakar from IIT Kanpur, Shri Gurdeep Singh, Chairman and Managing Director, NTPC Limited, and Shri Pramod Agarwal, Chairman and Managing Director, Coal India Limited. And we are fortunate that, sensing the critical and tricky nature of this topic, Shri Amrit Meena has agreed to chair and moderate the session himself. And I request, sir, to please join us on stage. To set the tone of this panel discussion, we have presentations based on the report of best global practices in just transition. And to initiate this discussion, first I would request Shri Shankar Nagachari, Director Technical CMPDIL, to please deliver the presentation on Indian perspective of just transition and sustainable best practices in coal sector.
Namaskar. Good afternoon, respected chair and the moderator and the panelists, all dignitaries of the dais and delegates present here. The report on best global practices for just transition in coal sector has been prepared by CMPDIL along with the World Bank under the guidance of Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Power and Coal India Limited. This slide 2, next please. This report contains both the Indian and global perspective as per the agenda of this event and some of the best practices in India as well as abroad. The report has been made under the guidance of Ministry of Coal as a part of one of its priority area, that is universal access to clean energy and just and affordable and inclusive energy transition pathways of the ETWG. CMPDIL along with World Bank prepared this report, and I am going to share on behalf of CMPDIL the Indian perspective in this presentation. Next, please. Just transition has been, in ILO's context, just transition means greening the economy in a way that is fair and inclusive as possible to everyone concerned, creating decent work opportunities and leaving no one behind. The term has been very correctly and deliberated and detailed in detail by our chairman, sir, during his speech. Next, please. The key features of just transition can be summed up as improved environment and physical landscape, and thus protect both biotic and abiotic components. Second, protection of livelihood for all the dependents through training and skill development. Third, sustenance of social institutions such as hospitals, schools, and infrastructures. And next, repurposing of the land such as pisciculture, agriculture, tourism, and other infrastructures for its gainful and economic transformation. Next, please. As deliberated earlier, COP21 in Paris 2015 spoke about a transition to low carbon energy system, and that this transition is a just transition by ensuring that livelihood of each impacted person is secured and no one is left behind. Coal is here to stay in India as deliberated earlier. However, mines are to close due to exhaustion of the reserves economically and viably. The closure of these mines needs to be handled on just transition principle to ensure that livelihoods of all impacted persons are secured. Next, please. We all heard about our Honorable Prime Minister's visionary and ambitious Panchamrit declared and reinstated again by our Secretary, sir. But as per our balanced approach, on the one hand, there is a thrust on renewable energy, and on the other hand, utilization will continue, coal utilization will continue for our development goals and energy security. We are trying to make this utilization as clean as possible. Next, please. In India, mining is done not only for profits, but they are also deeply entrenched in local ecosystem as it provides support to districts and states through revenue, royalties, that is royalties, DMF and other taxes, then support to schools, hospitals, roads, power, etc. And the next is CSR works, which is being taken by the concerned companies, coal companies. Thus, when closure of mine happens, local community is likely to be affected, impacted deeply. Next, please. Although coal in India will stay relevant for at least 2 decades more, but still Ministry of Coal, Government of India has formulated a visionary plan on just transition. The main strategies of just transition in India focuses on comprehensive mine closure plan, which is evolving and agile, unwavering of commitment and focus to help affected people and communities, and living a sustainable environment. Next. The role of finance in delivering a just transition will be very important and will require evaluation and identification of necessary costs, financial instruments to fulfill these costs and their subsequent mobilization. Some of the key cost factors have been elaborated here to be taken into consideration, such as mine closure, labor reskilling, economic diversification, social welfare, environmental remediation and repurposing, and governance arrangement. Next, please. Now coming to how just transition will actually be achieved, it will consisting of the following action: taking care of environmental resources and physical infrastructure by technical and biological restoration, repurposing of land and mine assets, and planning and implementing aspects related to social assets by having in place sustenance plan for existing social infrastructures, short-term and long-term livelihood support for the impacted communities, reskilling and redeployment of existing manpower, and capacity building for the communities, and keeping a dynamic and well thought of funding mechanism and institutional framework in which there will be role of coal companies, central, state and local governments and all the other stakeholders. In short, it can be said that environmental resources plus social assets plus physical infrastructure supported by financial mechanism and plus of an addition of institutional framework that will lead to just transition. Next, please. In our effort for creating a comprehensive just transition roadmap and strategy, we study some of the practices in our countries which have migrated from coal to other energy sources and how they handled the transition of the community affected from closing of coal mining. The global experience shared shows that just transition varies considerably from region to region and that there is no formal framework. Informed decisions can come from understanding broader linkages of coal with the local economy and stakeholders. Consultations are vital. Next, please. The takeaway from our study is that the countries having coal as a major source of energy need to prepare a formal framework taking energy security into consideration, mainly along with the environmental and social concerns. There needs to be a collaborative approach between G20 countries for knowledge sharing of successful practices through relative experiences, and also developed countries support the just transition process in coal-dependent countries with requisite financial and technological assistance to adopt low-carbon economic activities. Next, please. As we are already practiced and studied some of the best practices, I would like to deposit some of the pics which has already been covered in the film, short film shown here. The slides, please. This is the eco-restoration of one of the mines of BCCL, that is Sijua Tetulmari, undertaken by BCCL. Then pisciculture support, water sports developed by abandoned mine, quarry number 6 of Bishrampur open cast mine, SECL, where I have been privileged to work once upon a time. Then next, eco park developed by Gautam Khani, open cast project of Singareni Coal Companies Limited. Next, please. These are the pictures of OB dump reclamation. Next. Again, the water parks and eco parks. Next, please. these are the pictures taken from Navary Lignite regarding their reclamation plan. And with this, I would, at the end, I would like to quote a Greek proverb and complete my presentation over here. A society grows great when its old men plant trees in whose shade they know they will never sit in. It seems to so apt for today's gathering of leaders of the industry that is the thinking of better future for our upcoming generation is coming forward. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing how India plans to move ahead for a just transition when it closes its mind in foreseeable future. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Michael Stanley to give us a presentation on global scenarios on just transition.
Thank you so much. So, esteemed colleagues on this panel, and certainly esteemed members of this audience, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today on the global scenario for just transition. I think that as we begin this conversation, we have to recognize this is a very complex and difficult challenge, and it's going to be intergenerational. And so what I will show you today is a series of initiatives that different governments are taking, but I think we would agree that there's still further for us all to go on the issue of just transition. So as was presented by my colleague at CMPDI, certainly there is an imperative for just transition in the coal sector. If you look at this coal value chain from the mining through processing, transport, and down to the consumption, the impacts tend to fall very heavily in the coal mining itself because labor is concentrated 3 to 5 times greater than where it is in the rest of the value chain. And what is interesting is that we see today a number of countries that have, they're closing coal mines, even though coal production may remain the same or in some places increase. And that's because, as was pointed out, coal is becoming commercially less viable in many countries due to high production costs. There's exhaustion of reserves. And certainly the industry itself is consolidating. They are closing smaller, often loss-making coal mines to consolidate production into larger remaining assets. And so even in countries where coal production has unchanged, there's need for just transition support today because impacts are falling very heavily on people and communities. If we went back 5 to 10 years ago and looked at a program, a just transition support, you would see that we gave very, rightfully so, very heavy concentration of support to workers within the coal enterprises themselves, and that's represented by the green circle that you see here. Increasingly, it was a global lesson learned that there are many workers that are indirectly impacted by the closure of these assets, and therefore there was need to look at small to medium enterprises and other enterprises across that entire value chain, and that's represented by the blue circle on the left. And of course, these operations have for many decades supported social infrastructure. They have provided economic stimulus to local communities, and therefore we had to again expand our thinking and our support to pick up all of the community-based issues. And this is so very important that we provide support to workers, direct and indirect, and that we give equal balance and attention now to these broad communities that are in need of just support, just transition support. In 2021, the World Bank did a study to show that 2/3 of all coal-producing countries had already had significant loss of jobs within the sector, and it was distributed on the direct, the indirect, and the induced. And therefore, collective actions were needed across a very large diversity of different stakeholders. There actually are a great many opportunities today for us to begin just transition support. Coal regions have within them extensive land and infrastructure. It may have closed. They may be operations that closed 3 to 5 years ago or will be closing in the next couple of years. But they represent a significant opportunity for repurposing. And also, we have come to see that coal enterprises themselves and the small to medium enterprises along the value chain are also seeking to pivot, and they too can be drivers of change within these coal regions. And they have brought strong interest in environmental rehabilitation, restoration of infrastructure, and repurposing. And so this repurposing is a very key message going forward. Certainly, it has been long recognized that a just transition involves a diversity of stakeholders. We have labor, direct and indirect. We have enterprises, we have government at the central union level, state level, district level, and we have a great many other members of civil society that need to be inclusively involved and consulted within this process. And lastly, ESG investors are increasingly taking interest in repurposing opportunities within coal regions, but where the public sector leads financing and where the public sector gives kickstart to the whole process. So a couple key messages on the lower left. One is to focus beyond closure and to think about this repurposing of land and infrastructure assets to create new livelihoods for people and communities before the next closure. They have something to transfer to. And to certainly move beyond the coal asset itself and to think about these socioeconomic linkages across the region. And therefore, there's need to look at the social and cultural dimensions of the transition, to have partnerships with communities and planning with communities, and to focus very strongly on regional economic development going forward. Frameworks are being developed. This is an example of the framework that the World Bank has developed and is being shared with Government of India. And it has several key issues or elements within it. One is the need for a platform to have continuous consultation with this diversity of stakeholders. It's represented by the blue band across the top. And within that platform, you can share knowledge, you can disseminate learnings, and you can have coal regions speak with one another and build confidence that there is indeed a better way. As always, where one is involved in the repurposing of land and assets, there are three key elements to be considered. The first is institutional governance and to strengthen institutional governance. That includes the policies and regulations that the industry and the government will need to go from simple closure through to repurposing, and to build a vision across this diversity of stakeholders, as I said, through these platforms, continuous dialogue and inclusive planning and preparation. The second pillar is people and communities. As I said previously, we gave heavy attention to people, social protection, and now we seek to balance that out so that community-driven development sits at the core of this just transition. So plans are prepared locally, they are implemented locally, and we must build capacities with people and communities. That includes reskilling and long-term education for younger workers and future workers within those regions. And third pillar is land and environmental remediation, to make sure that we do not leave behind environmentally degraded areas, but rather bring them back to a brownfield site so that they can be used, they can be repurposed, and through broad-scale holistic planning, large acreages of land having different investment opportunities can be put out to the private sector. The enterprise in many countries, the coal enterprise, is a part of this process because it actually does control much of the land and the associated infrastructure. So institutional governance, people and communities, and land and environmental remediation. Repurposing and inbound investments then tell us the appropriate education and reskilling that's required for people and communities. This is definitely a long-term enterprise, a long-term challenge for all governments. As shown on the screen, there are actually few governments that have gone to conclusion on just transition. Most began decades ago and are still within the process today. So this is what we have come to call an intergenerational challenge. We must take actions today that will prepare opportunities for people and communities for our children going forward. It's best to think of this in three phases in terms of repurposing. In the first phase, early public sector investments can come in to improve upon the environmental conditions of the region, working with the coal enterprise itself under the polluter pays principle. And so through demonstration projects and spatial planning, a package of land and infrastructure assets can be put out to the private sector. And so in the second phase, scarce public resources are strategically used to support reskilling, education, and to strengthen institutional capacities and human capacities, while the private sector increasingly takes a role on investing in these land and infrastructure packages that have been made available. And of course, as always, the objective is to diversify the coal region, and therefore a diversity of private sector investments are being sought. And in the third phase, increasingly, we see public-private partnerships to take the just transition to scale. The private sector, together with the enterprises that remain, SMEs, coal enterprises, and others, increasingly are undertaking new investments that diversify the economy, while governments at all levels are focusing on people and communities and the implementation of strategies and transition projects that have been designed. I will just show you very briefly some global examples, some good and some perhaps that I think have improved through time. The first is a very well-known transition mechanism. It's by the European Union, and it really is widely recognized as, I think, the founding example of this current generation of strong just transition support. It begins on the left with the Just Transition Fund, it's allocating $19.2 billion and seeking to leverage up to $25.4 billion of investments. It is requiring coal regions or territories, there are 41 within the European Union, to prepare local transition projects, and from that they receive public sector financing to support the implementation of them. InvestEU Just Transition Scheme comes in behind with a strong emphasis on education and innovation and stimulating new industries and ensuring that they succeed in these regions as they go in. And the European Investment Bank has a public sector loan facility, again, seeking to mobilize up to $18.5 billion of additional investment. Key to the entire European Union Just Transition mechanism is the platform that I mentioned previously. It brings the regions together for sharing of knowledge, experiences, and for them to build the confidence that indeed there are good practices and there is a better way going forward. This example is from the United States. It perhaps, I think, is illustrative of a history that in the early years did not go so well. The United States produced most of its coal from the Appalachia region, and in the late 1970s, early 1980s, the industry shifted out to the prairies, to what's called the Rocky Mountain, Northern Rocky Mountain area. It left behind 14 states that were coal dependent and 414 counties that were partially or entirely coal dependent. And across the ensuing decades, they had serious social and economic lagging development indicators. And so it was a region that for 2 decades or more suffered tremendous social ills. And in January of 2021, the United States President authorized the Interagency Working Group to come together to assess different government programs and government initiatives to build one cohesive, integrated approach. And I can say that the U.S. Department of Energy has since done that and has brought in 18 different agencies, all of whom are now working together, aligning their programs, targeting these key coal regions, and have come up with a list of very important prioritized projects for communities and individuals, as you see on the screen. This is perhaps the most recent of examples of coordinating mechanisms, and this is from Indonesia. This is the JETP, which is the Just Energy Transition Partnership Coordinating Mechanism. And what you see on the left is a series of policy and project interventions government of Indonesia wishes to implement as part of its just energy transition. So on the left, we have all of these objectives around the retirement of coal, the renewable energy, grid transmission, just transition support, decarbonization, et cetera, et cetera. In the middle are all of the various government agencies who are coordinated through a secretariat, and they have put together 5 working groups: technical, policy, financing, just transition, and electrification and energy efficiency. And on the right side, you have all of the development partners who have analytics that they can contribute to the JETP, and certainly finance. And so the JETP Secretariat takes the objectives of the government on the left, it works through these technical working groups, as you see, and it mobilizes and brings in financing opportunities on the right. So it is, in fact, a very complete package of proposed support that government of Indonesia is preparing. These are 2 photographs. We quite like the one on the left. If you have traveled recently and flown through Istanbul, it is the world's largest airport. And next time, I ask you to look out the window as you're landing, because you will notice it is, in fact, a repurposed coal mine. And as you come down from the sky, you'll see that there are still areas that have yet to be repurposed, but that world's biggest airport is sitting in a public-private partnership, the transformation of a coal mine into a very large piece of infrastructure. And then we are very appreciative, Ministry of Coal supplied on the right, This is an example of an open cast mine quarry in Chhattisgarh, and it's the Bishrampur. It's a very lovely example of bringing in floating solar renewable energy, which is a very popular repurposing activity going forward. To summarize, certainly from the global experience, there is a need for greater planning and preparation, projects to be decided at the local level, national vision, but certainly build the capacity, the institutional capacity for strong, inclusive stakeholder engagement at the local level and implementation of these projects. Secondly, there are opportunities today in these regions. There is land and there is infrastructure that either has been idled or will be idled in the next few years, and you can repurpose that and use public-private partnerships to create new livelihood alternatives and alternatives for people to transition to as the energy transition goes forward, and that's so important. And secondly, that will mobilize early financing from the private sector and build confidence within the private sector that these are indeed opportunities. And then lastly, mechanisms increasingly are being used. Interagency mechanisms, you saw the JETP, the United States, and the European Union. They all have gone to coordinating their agencies so that they give a very holistic and integrated solution. And within that, they are almost universally adopting frameworks, as I showed you. Focus on institutional governance, people and communities, environmental remediation that leads to repurposing. And lastly, as always, begin with a set of measurable indicators so that we can track and report and assess the performance of the just transition going forward. I thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for showing us from a global perspective and from global learnings that how just transition is still a melting pot and that we have much to learn from each other for creating a locally suitable policy. I'm sure you must be knowing that our Honorable PM has given such a visionary slogan of local for vocal, vocal for local, for developing local businesses. And I think what you have stressed much is that for just transition, we will have to be vocal with our locals to create a locally suitable plan. With this, ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for panel discussions, which will be followed by a live audience interaction for some time. And I now request our chair and moderator of the session, Shri Amrit Meena, to please take the lead. Sir.
Thank you very much. I would like to compliment the presenters, Mr. Nagachari and Mr. Stanley, for outstanding presentations on both the subjects. Mr. Nagachari gave overview of just transition framework being adopted in our context. The roadmap draft has been shared. Sri Stanley has shared global experience of European Union, United States, Indonesia, and a way forward has been suggested. We in India have so far been, for our energy security requirement, focusing on coal production to meet the requirement. But now many of our coal mines, the reserves are getting exhausted. So it's time for us to consider and take forward the just transition in coal sector to the way it has been done in other parts and as per our requirement. Now, carrying forward, I'll now request Sri Pramod Agarwal ji for his views on the subject and also as to how new policy of just transition and usage of decoaled land is being promoted. As you all know, under his leadership, Coal India Limited has achieved new heights, not only in production, but also in the environmental protection and usage of decoaled land for various environment-friendly uses. Exemplary work has been done by Coal India Limited. So over to you, Pramod ji.
Thank you, sir. As I was mentioning, that to me, transition is a much larger word, and this energy transition will lead to a world where the carbon emissions will be very less. there was a report from McKinsey which stated that by 2050, India can achieve net zero transition, although the Honorable Prime Minister has kept a target of 2070 for achieving the net zero target. But if an accelerated approach is taken, by 2050 also net zero thing can be achieved. And in that situation, perhaps all the coal mines of the country, all the thermal power stations will get closed. And in that situation, the implications of this on the area of their operations are going to be very extreme. These areas are already very poor, and their economy is completely dependent on energy. And if this source of energy dries up, or this source of economy dries up, perhaps Eastern India will be a great sufferer. But this transition is going to take place. Whatever we may say, whether we manage the demand side or not, or whether we take the supply side or not, the current situation cannot continue forever. And this carbon emission has to reduce if the world has to survive. Already the target of 1.5 degrees centigrade seems unachievable, and if the earth heats beyond 2 degrees, perhaps survival of the humankind will become impossible. And in that situation, how to manage this transition and what are the steps required are very critical. To me, first thing is that all the developments that are taking place in the energy should be shared with every person of the world. If, like Mr. Stanley was presenting this thing, Europe has identified 80 billion euros for Europe for managing this transition. US has earmarked a lot of money for this transition. But what happens to Congo? And what happens to the different countries of the Africa? Congo was saying that we will use our peat for our own purposes. When they were advised that they should not do because it will lead to large emissions of the carbon, which may affect the life on the earth, their reply was, we are otherwise also dying. So why to care for what is going to happen in future? So every resource, every development has to be shared with everyone in the world, and only then this transition will be possible. If a few developed countries tries to corner the development or the new technology that comes up, and then try to market it in a way that whole of the world become dependent on them, then perhaps this transition will become difficult, and the survival of the world will be put in question. What's happening today? There are many motors which have been developed, rare earth motors, where efficiency levels are very high. The electrification process that is going in the world, where the efficiency level increases tremendously, that technology, etc., are not shared with everyone in the world, or they put a lot of premium on that so that it becomes inaccessible. If this attitude continues, then people who are cornering the resources today cannot blame the people who are deprived of it, that you are contributing to the heating of the earth, and they cannot be blamed for the transition not taking place. So to my understanding, these things are very important. And coming to the local content, and second thing which I wanted to say, that this transition this time is not going to be a slow process. Whenever it happens, it will be very fast and quick. We have seen that all our norms, all our standards which we have followed for any transition, for any change that is taking place in the world, have been broken, and that these changes have happened very fast. And in this case also, the change will happen very fast. To my understanding, in the next 4 or 5 years only, we will see that the electrical cars have come in a big way in the country or all over the world. Whether we like it or not, perhaps petroleum industry will get severely affected because of the development in electrical cars. Because the efficiency level in the electrical cars are very high, and the economy is already there to see. But coming to the transition aspect in Coal India, we know that there are certain changes which were required to be made, so that whatever land is there, as Mr. Stanley was saying, that there is a lot of land which is unutilized or which will be left unutilized. There are a lot of resources or infrastructure which are unutilized or which will be left unutilized. And how to use those resources so that they can be fruitfully used for the development of the area, that area is very critical. And we will have to start right now. Coal India on its part can do the physical closure of the mines. And we are working aggressively on that. Perhaps the results will be visible very soon. And in that, the physical closure of the mine is perhaps the easiest step in the whole transition process. The more difficult process is how to take care of the society which are resident in that area and who are living in that area, and how to take care of their livelihood. That will be a challenge, and that challenge can be faced only if all the stakeholders work together. State government, central government, local government, and the coal-producing companies. If money will not be the problem will be to have a right policies and right institutions in place. Coal India is partnering with World Bank to develop these institutions and these organizations so that these transitions can be made smooth. But there is a need that these all governments work together and develop a framework which will be helpful in utilizing the land. Land is a precious resource, and utilizing the land, the water, and the infrastructure which will be lying unutilized, so that the impact of these transitions can be mitigated on the local community. And I don't know what is the right policy, what is the right mechanism to achieve this. But if we work together, definitely that mechanism can be found. And this is very critical for this part of the country, which is already very poor. Otherwise, it will result in social strife. It will result in a lot of problem for the country. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Pramod. Now, I'll invite Mr. Gurdeep Singh ji, CMD NTPC. As you all know, NTPC is not only into thermal power generation, but now they are emerging as leaders in renewal and also a mining company now. So I'll request him for his perspective with a specific focus on the specific energy security challenges of our country in the context of transition to cleaner energy sources. Sri Gurdeep Singh.
Thank you, sir. I think we have heard this from the experts in the last more than an hour or so, and I would only like to supplement rather than bringing out some of the new aspects. But I think it's quite clear that we are one of the economy which is growing and growing at a very fast pace, and that is required. So our energy requirement is going increasing. Secretary Power just mentioned in the last session that we had registered double-digit growth in case of the power consumption. And so there was a lot of constraint on different sources of the energy, and particularly on the coal supply, because then there was the only source which was able to really supplement or to meet the requirement of the grid was the coal-based capacity, and the coal production had to be increased, rather it has to be supplemented, and then we are going. So when we are talking about the power generation, mostly in India we are dependent still on the coal-based power generation, which is approximately 70%, which was again Jaina mentioned in the previous session. So what are the ways how we can really bring down this percentage, and how soon or how sustainable we can really make it? I think that's going to be the question. Secretary sir just introduced me that yes, we are going very aggressive in case of renewable. You all will be knowing that we have already established quite sizable around 3.5 gigawatt of renewable that is already in commissioned stage. We have another around 5 gigawatt which is under construction, so every month it's getting commissioned. Then we have almost around another 10 gigawatts, so where the work is in the development phase which is going on. And we have committed in the case of the UN Energy Compact, we were the first energy company worldwide to commit that by 2032 we will be going up to 60 gigawatt of renewable energy, and we will be reducing our energy intensity at least by 10%. So in this context, when we are saying that we are doing everything possible in case of the renewable and to bring the efficiency, At the same stage, Secretary Sir just also introduced that we are going in the mining also. So I think the two things, when if you will put together, looks to be contrary to each other to a person who is not aware of the ground realities. But the fact is that our energy requirement is increasing at that fast rate that today we cannot say that I will be downsizing my coal consumption. I wish that we can do it tomorrow, but I think there has to be something, a viable, sustainable model of this. And then we will have to start working on how fast I can really reduce that. This repurposing of mines, today, this is a good discussion which happened, but at the same time, there has been another concept which is being talked about is repurposing of the old coal-based power station. I think this is a very wonderful thing to have, but first of all, I think we have to meet the requirement of our grid, the consumption requirement for our all citizens. It was also brought out very clearly that our per capita, whether it's power consumption or the total energy consumption, is very low. And it is bound to increase, and it is increasing every year, both in case of the peak requirement as well as the total energy requirement on an average. And we cannot deprive the citizens from the sources of the clean energy source for them. So now, when we are adding more and more renewable, and renewable today is only about, when we are saying renewable means wind and solar. However, there are other aspects which we are working on, that is biomass, and there is a municipal waste. We are working on those things also, so that it will be supplementing the coal consumption, and we can bring down the coal side, coal consumption side. So these steps are very, very clear. We have already successfully used up to 10% of the biomass in our power stations. And similarly, what we are doing experiment in one of the municipal corporation, which is Banaras, that 600 ton of the municipal waste, which is being converted into called green coal, and that will be blended with our coal in the power stations. So we will go on using all kind of innovations in case of increasing the efficiency, and try to integrate the renewable energy in the grid by reducing the coal consumption in our power stations, which is bringing the coal-based power station to a flexible operation, and we are able to bring down to a great extent, almost 50–55%. And then whenever the renewable is not available, we ramp it up. So those things are some sort of operational regime changes, but at the same time, some technological requirement to upgradation of the power plants which is necessary. In addition to that, most of you people would have seen that we are going in the nuclear also now. I think the repurposing of the coal-based power station will be one thing which is going to be very clearly is SMRs. Looks like that is going to be the opportunity. Maybe I think even in the coal, when the mine is closed, I think there will be in the kind of the kilometers of area where in the case of SMRs, it's likelihood that the exclusive zone requirement is only limited to 1 kilometer. So I think there will be enough space we can start thinking of. And fortunately, I think in case of our country, most of the mines are having nearby power stations, what we call it pit head power stations. So I think there will be also some kind of synergy. But saying that we can go for the energy transition, and we can start closing down the thermal plant or closing down the mines, and closure of the mines happens overnight. Probably this is overstated. The mines, when we are doing the mining activity, how more environment friendly we can be, I think this has been elaborated clearly by the Coal India chairman, and how we are taking care of the nearby environment and the communities which are there. Other point which was brought very clearly that our power stations are all across the country, whereas the coal is concentrated in some pockets, some areas of the country. So I think when we are talking about the just transition, this becomes very, very important. And unlike China, like some of the other countries where there is hardly some China, maybe up to 100,000 people who are dependent on the coal mining. In our country, I think it is millions of the people directly and then the indirect China which is available. So we will have to start looking at how we can find some kind of other kind of engagement or the jobs or the livelihood for those people while we are just closing some of the mines or closing some of the power station, because I have to deal with both. Now I am the power producer also and the coal producer also. So probably I think this complexity will get multiplied rather than getting added up, and it's in that respect. But certainly there is a clear pathway for this transition, which can be like the renewable energy. We are going at a very rapid pace, not only as a kind of company, which I said, but as a country. And we, as one of the largest producer of the renewable energy or the leading the energy transition, we also get involved in all the discussions. And I can say with confidence that the kind of the discussion which are happening in the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, there is no reason that it will be very fast, and it will be substituting some of the coal-based power generation to renewable energy very soon. The energy efficiency, I think that is the first step which was being talked again, and I'm not going to build on that. But now whether we all know that the success story of these LED, and now we have gone up to the ECBC, which is code for the building construction, how to reduce the energy consumption in that itself, and bringing more and more efficiency into it. The social safety net, I think this is to ensure that no one is left behind. We must create and strengthen some kind of this social security net, how we are able to take care of that workers. I think this is very, very important. And the main, directly the workers who are engaged directly or indirectly through the direct long-term employment or the contractual, I think they are the people who have to be just, I think, thought of. Although we are clear that it's going to take a decade or 2 decades, but we have to plan starting January, not even today, I think from yesterday itself. Financing, I think this is one thing which has been the point of discussion starting from 2015 onwards. Whatever was the commitment of $100 billion, but I don't think that has really seen some kind of good progress. I think Mr. Stanley just explained one of the case study here, but I think those mainly are coming as a kind of loan. I think this is primarily it's coming in the form of loan rather than anything else. But I think, as pointed out earlier, that it cannot be just tackled by one country or one state. I think it's a global problem, so it has to be dealt with globally, and it should come out in that way. So it's important that the international collaboration is must. The other important thing what is coming out, that the emissions mostly are taken as a carbon dioxide emission, but there are some other related emissions also which are important, which are less discussed, but it's important to discuss on those sides also. But the circular economy, what we have to just come out, it's going to be much more important, and in that case, whether it's going to be the technological aspects or whether it's financial aspects, and then what is the impact on the society, I think all this has to be put together. But before that, I think it comes out that the citizens need to have affordable and reliable power supply, because if they don't have the reliable and affordable power supply, in that case they will start using some of the other fuel, which is going to create more problem in the environment. I think this is one thing which we wanted to learn, and I think any country's progress is dependent on the energy. So while we are discussing everything, we will have to keep all these aspects in mind and then work out a comprehensive policy, whatever the policymakers, when they sit together, they have to be just taking into account all these things. So with that, I think I would conclude my this initial remarks, sir. But we can assure you that, like what you said about the largest coal producer, CIL, we also are going to work in a more environment-friendly and responsive way, whether it's going to be the first mile connectivity, whether it's mining itself, whether it's transportation and the usage. I think we are quite mindful of that, and we will go on working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gurdeep Singh ji. Thank you very much for your perspective. Now, I'll invite Dr. Pradeep Swarnkar ji for his perspective on this subject.
Thank you, sir. And it's quite difficult to be the last speaker because mostly the important points has already been discussed. But also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Secretary Coal and CMD Coal India, CMD NTPC, Mr. Stanley. When I was listening the entire day, the last 2 hours, I was wondering like what will be the principles of just transition, whether it will be a evolutionary principle or revolutionary principle, because of many things we have understood is unexplored. But the good thing is that we have started discussing these things so fast, because when we established the Center of Just Transition at IIT Kanpur 2.5 years ago, people have just started some studies, some World Bank studies, some local level studies, some civil society studies were there. And now it's an honor to observe the top dignitaries of the energy and coal who are talking about just transition. So if this is happening, and I think India is progressing much, much better and faster way in terms of energy transition. Two important things I'd like to mention regarding this, because we generally focus on studies and data and try to give some valid evidences to the policymaker so that they can take appropriate decisions. One point is that when we are talking to the ground level people in around 50 coal districts, the coal sentiment is very integrated in India. Like people are very much associated with coal and thermal power plants. And also the most important thing is that how we want to see justice. If we see that these companies given an enormous amount of push to the Indian economic growth, so the revenue, if you look at the revenue of these companies, that's unmatchable with other things. So, and that's why it is doing justice. The next thing is that, as already mentioned in other presentation, the social aspects like the education and the health facilities by these companies and the development of the sectors. So that is also unmatchable. So that is also justice. So justice is not new, and how we are looking at justice at the grassroots level, that was the most important point. And all this is happening for a long, long period of time. Third point is that when you look at global cases, either Appalachian or Ruhr Valley or South Africa, we completely understand that their nature is different, completely different, and I completely agree with Gurdeep ji that the coal dependence, the number of people, the number is so huge, we cannot compare with any other countries. So the responsibility and the mechanism will also be a little bit different than other countries. The next point I'd like to mention is what will be the framework for this just transition. Now, the framework should be based on affordability, completely agreed, and accessibility. These are the two justice principles. There are 8 justice principles, and these 2 most important justice principles, apart from intergenerational mobility and all these things. That we'll talk later. We'd like to say that we need a multi-level perspective. What is multi-level perspective? We talk about integration of various departments, various levels, state, center, companies, stakeholders. All these terminologies are coming. Multi-level perspective talks clearly about how national level and the state level and the district level, these 3 level connections in terms of exchange of knowledge and data. So we need a if we have to talk about people, we have to understand who are these people. We have to identify people, because we have some amount of idea about the formal workers and the contractual workers, but we do not have any kind of enumerations of the induced and the dependent people. In a direct way, we can actually understand things in intangible way or in a different way, but we need to understand who are these people. And so the data and a longitudinal data, whatever is happening, we need a continuous data and a kind of a model or a platform, online platform or an integrated platform, just to continue this kind of just transition effort. So this is very important. And the final point I'd like to mention, finance point already discussed, that finance is important and integrated. We do not have finance like Germany and other countries, but we already have certain things, and not throwing numbers like we need this much or that much. Whatever we have, because when we are working with the Jharkhand government task force, so we'll get some idea, like whatever we have, we should understand how things are happening and what can be contributed with the existing system. And then step by step, we should follow that. The final point I'd like to make is that as we are working on the just transition, the role of youth. Because from earlier session to this session, this is not like a year or 2 or something. If it is a 15 to 20 years, the people who will be in the workforce is actually right now, they are studying, they're in school or something like that. So how we should address the intergenerational mobility and focus on youth, that is another important point I'd like to make. And I think at Just Transition Research Center at IIT Kanpur, we are focusing on this. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for giving us opportunity, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir. So you have been hearing for very long, and I now open this panel discussion for the interaction of the audience and request audience for their observations, views, and questions, if any. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Respected dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. It's a very great opportunity to hear such good points and how we are going to transmit ourselves to a new situation. Especially those who have given their ideas. It is a very nice one. Actually, I have some little bit doubts that I would like to ask. As Mr. Stanley said, after reclamation, he has shown some photographs of some Turkey airport is made, and somewhere water bodies are there. Yeah, this is after closure. In fact, in NLC, I am from NLC India Limited. See, we are doing side by side. One side we are mining, and the other side we are doing this reclamation. Not only that, we have developed ecotourism. We joined hands along with the Pondicherry government, and we are developing ecotourism. We are developing a zoo, almost 200 to 250 deers are there and other animals are there. So we are making afforestation. So this is being done in India also, like every places. Second one is actually mines closure is a part that is possible, that is easy, it can be done. The main point what we have to address is how we are going to substitute the power requirement. That is the main point to be addressed. Mine closure it is easy. And even Mr. Swarnakar also told it is very difficult to getting finance. Getting finance is not a difficult, basically I'm a finance person only. So for getting a finance is not a difficult thing. But the only thing is how we are going to utilize it in an effective manner. It should bring some fruitful benefits. In fact, the way the population is increasing in India, after 20, 30 years, it will be difficult to get lands where coal or lignates are available. For at present, we are facing the same problem. See, wherever lignite belt is there, it is totally thickly populated area. So certainly this position will come everywhere. So we have to move, get ready ourselves.
Can you come to your focused question, please?
Yes, sir.
You are doing excellent work in NLC.
Yes, sir.
That at least we are aware of. But can you come to the focused question, please?
Yes, sir. My question was only, sir, the main question, Mr. Stanley, was how we are going to proceed to substitute the power requirement and rehabilitate the manpower involved. Of course, this has been discussed also. And the second one is, sir, respected CMD sir has told, CMD NTPC sir, they are involved in biomass also to reduce the carbon. Will it reduce the carbon, sir? That biomass also will increase the carbon only. And nuclear also, even if you shift to nuclear, then also it will have some side effects. After burning it, that final output will take some many years, something like that, isn't it, sir?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Stanley, would you like to respond?
Great, thank you. Thank you for your comments. With respect to how to replace power, it's interesting that in all of these countries, almost universally, one of the first projects that local communities and the districts and the regions identify is to use some of that land for renewable energy and then energy storage. And so photovoltaics take a very large footprint. And so if you have these lands and they're degraded and they can't be used for other purposes, increasingly you see that large photovoltaic arrays are going in there. And then secondly, a lot of underground coal mines increasingly are being viewed as batteries, pump storage batteries. And so you've got elevation differences and you've got water, and you can use renewable energy to put the water up to surface, and then when the sun is down and the wind is not blowing, you can put it down through the shaft across the turbine, and you basically have been storing energy. So I think there's a lot of innovation coming in the world in terms of replacing the coal energy with other energy. I sat through the hydrogen session this morning. I think there's a lot of merit in thinking long about how and when to pivot into energy, because I think energy is a very dense form, and it could indeed be a very viable alternative. You mentioned one other thing, which I just want to mention, that is that, I heard you say 20 years from now, it will be difficult to get land. We were involved in a closure project in Greece, and we discovered that the Lignite Mining Corporation of Greece actually had the largest contiguous parcel of land for redevelopment in all of Europe. And they didn't know that. They had 1,000 hectares of land for redevelopment. It was the largest in Europe. And so I think that this land issue, again and again, I think you'll find that everyone comes back to this, is that how much land is actually tied up inside enterprises that could be, through the coal enterprise itself, could be repurposed and brought to different uses going forward. I will stop there.
Thank you. Would you like to comment on that biomass and nuclear?
Okay, I think the first one about the biomass. So biomass is not a fossil fuel. So whatever I think it has already consumed in carbon dioxide and the photosynthesis which has happened. So that's the reason I think there is no incremental additional carbon dioxide which is emitted. So that's the reason it's called renewable energy. So that's a simple of that. In case of the nuclear, I think there are many technologies which are being worked upon, but otherwise also there are many other countries who are utilizing, have exploited the nuclear power, and they are having the kind of the cleaner energy source, which is without carbon dioxide or without emissions of that. The nuclear waste disposal, I think this is a question which is being handled, and it's not that we will be having then some more kind of more innovative ways than the world knows today. We will have to depend on whatever the technology is going to be there and how we can release. But one thing which has to be kept in mind, and I would invite you to attend some of the session tomorrow, because we are going to have tomorrow, there is another in this year, that per acre or per square kilometer of the land, the nuclear is the only source which can generate maximum power. So this is very, very important. The renewables require huge, and there has been some opposition and in some areas already. So there will be new innovations and new problems. I'm sure that, let me repeat here, that some people will be knowing that when the first oil well was dig or was operational, the whales celebrated. Means that whales were very happy that now there is some other source of oil which will be utilized for the lighting purpose in the bigger places. But we were not knowing that after some time we will be talking about that oil is also carbon intensive and we need to phase out. Tomorrow, if the technologies really become mature for the carbon capture and utilization, what we are also experimenting something on that, so then it becomes a part of the circular economy. So jokingly, I keep telling everybody that don't get surprised that after about a decade or so, NTPC will become National Transport Power and Chemicals. Because we can utilize our carbon dioxide, have the green hydrogen, and we can have the hydrocarbons with that. So only sources that coal has to be mined, it has to be, then it's the most beneficial way. So let's not, maybe then today it looks to be then a kind of only in dreams, but tomorrow it may be technology has no limitation on that. Thank you.
Any other observations? Yes, please.
So I'm from Government of Maharashtra, from Ministry of Environment. Right now, sir, Maharashtra is generating nearly 30,000 megawatt per day consumption, out of which maybe 27,000 coal-based and maybe 3,000 wind. And we are getting coal around 40% of the ash content, which was analyzed. And sir, as the Ministry of Environment and Forest has declared in its notification, there should be a mine safe closure plan for the progressive and final closure of the plants for the filling of the ash. My request to the power company and the Coal India, what is your transition plan for the closure of the mines, which will be declared on a yearly basis, so that the state of Maharashtra, as we generate nearly 30,000 of the 30,000 megawatt daily consumption in the peak summer, generating crores of tons of ash in a per day, whether there is a phase-wise program for the mine closure to fill this ash, fly ash and bottom ash into the voids of the mine. My question to both the NTPC as well as the Coal India.
First you can,
Whom do you want to go first?
as producer.
Okay. Oh no, we are not the as producer. We get something which we really separate.
No, you are
No, no, as by way of thermal power
Okay,
generation.
I'll take up that.
I know you are not
no
a
issues.
ash producer, but you got two plants in Maharashtra. One
Yeah,
is at Nagpur and
no,
one
no,
is
no,
at
let me
Solapur.
guess. Yeah, we have the two plants. One in Solapur and one other is near Nagpur, Moda. Ash disposal has been always a difficult proposition, but the good thing what we are just as a progressive nation, we always try to take steps which improves the environment. And as of now, the new plants, if you are just going, or the new, even the existing plant, if you want to have the land for the ash disposal, Environment Ministry is not allowing that. Okay. So the power producers are forced, or any this which consumes coal and there is a ash production, that is being forced to utilize, you find ways how it can be utilized. The cement manufacturers, they pick up a large amount, like I think we have almost around 30 to 35% of the fly ash goes to the cement manufacturing, and they have reduced their carbon emission kind of from their plants in that. The next one is which is the major source is the low-lying filling area or the construction of highways or the roads, etc., which is being utilized in a big way at present. And the third one is going to be, I think it was being mentioned, but the best way is that mine stowing. If there is no other usage is found possible, then it has to go back to the mine. So this is where I think there is a maximum, but I think Environment Ministry is taking very stringent steps that we cannot go on and just having the ash ponds and go on piling up. No new ash ponds they're allowing beyond some very, very small piece of land which can exhaust at any time. This is emergency kind of ash ponds of that. So this is the only thing which I'd like to share. If you want to have more detail, I'll off the chain. I think after this you can feel free.
Would you like to add, Pramod?
Yeah, ash is definitely a big problem, especially in the area where the power plants are concentrated. Where the power plants are distributed, ash is not a problem because most of that ash is being utilized now by cement factories or other construction activities, like he mentioned about the road construction. Another area in all the building, the government has issued a notification that within 300 kilometers of any power plant, red bricks cannot be used. And so much of construction activities are going on, and now they have developed new technology or whatever technology that bricks can be constructed from this fly ash, etc. Coming to bottom ash, we will be very willing to use bottom ash for stowing purposes. Fly ash cannot be so effectively used for stowing purposes, but bottom ash can be used, and if there is a bottom ash and you can deliver it to us, we will definitely use for stowing purposes wherever the underground mines are available. For open cast mines, if the mines are closed, DGMS does not allow us to use the fly ash till the time mine is closed completely. For the this operating mines, fly ash deposition is not allowed. So once the mines are closed, we are very willing to give those mines to any powerhouse, and this has been given in many areas. The old mines have been given to powerhouses where they are dumping the ash. So that is not a problem, and actually it is an environmentally friendly thing because ash has to be dumped somewhere and the mines has to be closed because the coal has been taken out. The whole overburden which is available cannot fill this void that has been created. If the fly ash is deposited there and we create a layer of the soil there, then a good thing can be done, and we are open to that. And wherever these mines have been closed, we will be very willing to give those mines for dumping the ash.
Sir, can I?
Yeah, please.
Mr. Stanley, can I request you if you have some international experience where the ongoing mine, I think the lignite man just said that there is a kind of parallel activity which is going on.
They are dumping the
so
overburden.
Maybe if there is an international experience which is really proven one, that during the active life of the mine, there can be a mine backfilling through the fly ash which is coming from the power station.
There are many, thank you for that, because there are a lot of good examples of that. I'm reminded of Poland, where in Poland they were closing mines, but then opening mines beside it. And the company actually took some of its workers that had skills and created a mine closure company. And then they dealt with the fly ash problem and other things. So they basically took the skills, the equipment, and the resources of the enterprise to address the problem themselves. And then they were able to commercialize those properties. That becomes a valuable commercial asset after you have done that. And so they were able to monetize what was otherwise a liability going forward.
I'll be very happy, Jan, if you can spend some time, Jan, if there is some good experience. Thank you.
So I thank all the audience. Since we are running short of time, so if there are further questions, you can have them over tea. I also thank all the panelists for their outstanding deliberations. And as have been mentioned, this just transition in coal sector is very, very complex subject matter. While on one hand, we are talking shifting from fossil to renewable, but on the other hand, our energy security requirement is forcing us to produce more coal. Currently, we are producing about 1 billion ton, but by 2030, we are required to produce about 1.5, and maybe by 2040, even more than that. On the land availability front, as the pressure of population is increasing, it is getting day by day difficult for the coal companies to acquire land. In fact, in Nibeli lignite, because of non-availability of land, 2 of the lignite-based power plants are shut for some time. So these are the challenges in which we are working. On the other side, if you look at from the revenue perspective, very significant revenue of the coal producing states is coming from the coal mining operations. 400 rupees per ton GST contribution by way of GST compensation is coming through coal mining operation. You must have also seen the railways freight movement this year record high. It's almost half of it is because of the coal. So while various segments of our economy are dependent on coal economy, the employment opportunities are enormous. There are direct about 3 lakh employees of different coal companies. More than 50 lakh population is indirectly dependent on the coal sector. So it's a very complex subject. I'm happy that all of you have contributed and will continue to work on it. And as a result of the deliberations, I'm sure we'll come out with a good just transition roadmap. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sirs. For this amazing session, I think everybody must have gathered deep, insightful perspective about just transition, where champions of the industry talked about how they are aware of the challenges and they are keeping a vigilant eye on innovative technologies that can be deployed in future. How academia told us that we have to be very much mindful of the magnitude of the problems, or how stakeholder consultations will be very important. How our guest from World Bank, Mr. Stanley, told us about the global learnings and perspectives that can be utilized here also. And in the end, the top policymaker concluded the seminar and the crux of the session, saying how we have to be agile about the framework that we develop and the roadmap that we go ahead for just transition. So all in all, a great plenary session we had here. And as a token of our gratitude for the gentlemen taking out time and sharing us their wisdom with us, I would request ED Environment CIL, Shri A.S. Bapat, to please present a memento from our side. Sir. I would also request Sri Shankar Nagachari to please come up on stage and receive his memento, as he was also one of the presenters. Request Bapat sir to please felicitate Mr. Nagachari with the memento. Thank you, sir. And I could request gentlemen for a group photo here. Thank you, sir. And at the end of this session, I would request Sri Shankar Nagachari, Director Technical CMPDI, to please deliver vote of thanks. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for making this event a huge success. And I'm sure we have learned a lot today. And this session will be followed by high tea, which is just outside this hall. Thank you.